Here to discuss packaging design is Kelly Criswell, the Chief Creative Officer of Grow Agency.
How do I do this? Oh. All right. Hi, I'm Kelly Criswell. As you mentioned, I'm the Chief Creative Officer at the Grow Agency. The Grow Agency, we are based in both New York and Los Angeles. We specialize in brand strategy, packaging design, and brand amplification. And by brand amplification, I mean social media, point of sale, any kind of marketing communications for your brand, anything beyond the package. And we have been doing this in the food and beverage industry specifically for 30 years. Personally, I have been with the agency for 17 years, which, if you're good at math, means they hired me when I was 10. So, now that we got that out of the way, here are some of our brands. You'll see that we work with a lot of very large CPG, like Nestle, and we also work with a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs. We help, our experience in the natural channel with startups and entrepreneurs really helps us to work with the bigger brands and vice versa, I think. So we have a lot of experience doing both of those things. Like I said, only food and beverage. And here's a small sampling of some of our work in the last maybe year and a half or so. So I love this quote. Oh. Look, I can see it here too. I love this quote from the CEO of Jaguar: "If you think good design is expensive, you should look at the cost of bad design." And I think this is really important when you're first starting out to address your branding and your packaging design in the beginning. It will help you in the future. It'll help you avoid costs and avoid difficulties with getting into retail or anything else in the future. So I think that's something important to look at in the very beginning. So I'm just going to start off with some basics about brand positioning, and then I'll talk about some basics about packaging, and then I'm going to go through some case studies and show you exactly what I mean by that. I think visuals are an easier way to learn. So I'll talk to you about brand positioning first. This is my kind of deconstruction of brand positioning, and I'll go through each point a little bit, but you need to know your product, define your target market, choose a brand name that resonates, create a brand story, and understand your world and your competitors. So the first thing is know your product. What need does your product satisfy? And what's your origin story? Everybody has a reason why you started your brand to begin with, right? So what need were you trying to satisfy in the world or in your family or within yourself? So really get in touch with why you exist. Define your target market, know who you're talking to, and be very specific. I talk to a lot of brands, and you'd be surprised how many people say, "I'm targeting everyone. Everyone would like my product." That is not a target audience, right? You have to be really specific about who you're talking to. All your brand communications moving forward rely on that. And filling their needs. How does your product fill the need of the target consumer? So really understanding those big things. And choose a brand name that resonates. Think big. Choose a name that will grow with you. The difference between calling yourself Tea's Tea, for example, or Honest Tea. Honest can scale if Honest decides to make juice or whatever else. They can scale with that. If 5 years down the line you decide to expand your product offering, you need to have a name that will expand with you. Convey your values. Honest is another great example of this. A brand name that talks about your values as a company. So Honest Tea, Kind Bar, Harmless Harvest. Those are good examples of brand names that really resonate emotionally and are specific to your brand. Make it memorable and then trademark it. It's very hard to trademark a name that is descriptive, so try to be really specific and memorable. Make it easy to pronounce, all of those things. And then create your brand story. This is where the magic happens. You need this brand story to really resonate with your target market that you've already uncovered. You have to be really clear about your attributes, your brand attributes, and your points of differentiation. A brand story is the thing that's going to drive all of your communication through all of your packaging, all of your marketing. Everything is going to be driven by this perfectly crafted brand story. And the voice is as important as the content. So this is where you discover who you are and what your voice is, and are you playful, are you serious? This will drive all your content moving forward. And understand your world. Assess your competitors. You can't stand out unless you see what everyone else is doing. You have to know how to differentiate yourself from your competition. And understand the shopping environment. Take a look at where your product will live on the shelf. If everybody else is using the color orange to say orange flavor, don't use purple. People will think it's grape. Just understand the conventions of your section, and then study the shoppers and their behavior and understand how they shop. So, what is good packaging design? This is my checklist of how I evaluate all packaging design, whether we're doing it in-house or I'm looking at somebody else's. And I think it's a really handy checklist. In fact, I brought a bunch of them with me. I printed this checklist out, and you can go through and really assess is your packaging checking off all these boxes. So one of the number one things your packaging should do is create an emotional connection with the target consumer. That's how people connect with you. That's how people make a decision on shelf. You should be visually communicating the brand positioning that you've written before. So you've got this beautiful brand story and brand positioning, and this is where it's going to come to life. You should immediately and intuitively differentiate yourself from everybody else. So that should be a very quick read of why your product is different than everything else out there. You should communicate taste appeal here, or functional benefits, depending on the product. And good packaging will guide the consumer purchase decision in 3 seconds or less. That's how long you have to grab the consumer's attention. You've got 3 seconds. So you better be bold, you better be really, really clear, and really, really focused. Packaging is your number one marketing tool. So the most brilliant, social media strategy is going to fall flat if you don't have great packaging to back that up. So here I'm going to get into some case studies and some visuals to kind of explain what I'm talking about. I call this the good, the bad, and the badass. And I'm going to start with Solum. So this is a before picture. I actually met the brand owner for Solum at BevNet this year in the summer in New York. And he had this great product from Mexico they were trying to launch in the US. And this was their package. And so the first thing we did with him is we studied the competitive market. We looked at other functional beverages and saw that he wasn't really doing anything to stand out. There was no real point of differentiation, and people didn't really understand what Agua Fresca was. So he was having a really hard time getting retail distribution with this package. So we created this. We created a brand story that is very unique to this product. We looked at the kind of God archetype, and there's this Aztec Mexican god that's the god of water, and so we kind of utilized him and wove this beautiful brand story for them. And we're telling that story in a really bold, iconic, graphic way to really stand out on shelf from the other functional beverages. And we're utilizing, the transparency of the label to see what's inside, obviously. And we're utilizing the other panels to really show this has fiber and probiotics, show what the point of differentiation is, and to kind of tell this different story. And here's all the flavors. By the way, not all the designs in here are ours, but I'll tell you when they are. This is also one of ours. So this is a Pacific Gold package. This is the okayest theory. I'm going to tell you guys first about the theory that I have. So stay with me. So I came up with this idea several years ago. I have at the time, two really little kids, and my career was getting really big, and I found myself navigating a lot of different tasks and doing a lot of different things. And I found that I was kind of doing a mediocre job at all of those things that I was trying to do. And I thought about it, and really, I took a look at what my brand positioning is, Kelly's, values and mission and all that. And I said, okay, I'm going to only focus on doing really, really well at these things that line up with my brand positioning, my personal brand positioning, which means that I am really good at spending quality time with my kids at night, but I am the okayest at signing permission slips on time, or sending my kids to school with like bento box lunches or whatever. So, and I call it the okayest theory because I think we all are perfectionists. We want our brand to do everything. We want ourselves to be able to do everything. And I think it's hard to, the hard part of this is to accept that I'm going to be okay at some of these things and I'm going to really excel at these other things, right? And the same goes for work. And this really applies to packaging design. And right at the time when this was happening in my personal life, Pacific Gold came to us with this package, which has the same problem that I had, which was that it's trying to do everything, but it's doing nothing well. It's just mediocre. And so they didn't really understand who their target was. They were targeting both men and women. They were trying to be a natural package, but they've got this kind of highly over-illustrated flavor cue. They had a premium price point, but they've got a really cartoony logo. Everything was working against itself, right? So we found their focus. We're focusing men, adventurous flavor seekers, who are looking to spend a little more money on their jerky, a higher price point. And we created a package that really focuses on those things and is really kind of okayest at the rest. Like, it's still a natural product, but we're not really shouting that from the rooftops. That doesn't line up with the brand mission for this particular brand. So, it's doing okay at that stuff, but it's doing really well at other stuff. And that's what makes this package successful. And here's some of the other flavors. And I think that brings me to, another point, which is it has to be, we just took this snapshot from their Instagram feed, but it has to be Instagrammable. So whatever packaging you have has to work in this big, right? So it has to be really bold, it has to be really focused, and it has to really tell the story quickly. Otherwise, you're gonna lose people on, one of your main marketing places, which is social media. Okay, this one isn't our brand. This is Annie's, and I love this brand. I buy it every week. It's wonderful. They have a ton of shelf space, but it looks like 1,000 different brands, right? Because they're not owning their space. It's a real missed opportunity, in my opinion. And I'm not against having the rainbow effect. I think that's a big trend nowadays for packaging. Having, back in the olden days of packaging, we'd try to really color block or brand block. And now you see a lot of rainbow effect on shelf, and that's fine as long as there's a consistent element that brings the whole brand together. And the Annie's logo is really kind of recessive. So there's nothing that's really holding this together as one great big brand block on shelf. Instead, it just looks like a lot of different brands. This is one of ours as well. Here's the before shot. This is Kabaki, Kenyan Purple Tea. I met the owner of this brand at Expo, I think last year. And he had this amazing product that was really innovative and had this great social mission. And he's from Kenya. He has all this great passion, this great story. And he was calling it Kenyan Purple Tea. And we said, what happens when somebody else comes out with Kenyan Purple Tea, right? And somebody did. These guys came out with a Kenyan Purple Tea, right? And they're talking all about the purpleness and the, quality of purple tea on their packaging. And so luckily we had already started working with him and we had already started on this package. So we branded him Kabaki, which is his family name in Kenya. And we really tried to tell the emotional story, taking you to Africa, because some money goes back to the community there, and we really wanted to kind of capitalize on the origin story, the beautiful origin story and the social mission for this. So that's where we bring the emotional connection with the consumer. And we do that through obviously through the photography and the African elements on the packaging. And again, has to look good on Instagram, right? So it's really, really important these days that packaging works on Instagram. Here's another example. This is not our brand, but I know the owners of this brand, and they were getting into big trouble. It's a beautiful product. It's a frozen entree made from steel-cut oats. And the category was expanding in frozen, but their distribution was going down, and they were really getting lost on shelf because their packaging, the white overhead bowl shot, all of that was being used by so many different competitors, they were really getting lost. And they did this. They made a huge statement with their look. And like I said before, that trend of having the rainbow effect on shelf with every one of your flavors being a different color, great. But they have a consistent overhead bowl shot that brings the whole thing together and makes it all look like the same brand. And they really went big with illustration and color, and they did a great job. Love Grown. So I was showing this to a colleague earlier, and she was like, well, what's wrong with that packaging? It looks good. And I said, it's a bean cereal. And she said, oh, because that does not look like a bean cereal. That looks like a conventional big brand sugar cereal. The top two are, targeted towards adults, and the bottom two are targeted towards children. But they are, the claims are all over the place, and it really lacks the focus on the true differentiator, which is that this is bean cereal. It's really good for you, and it's actually really delicious too. So I think they're kind of missing the mark here because they're at the very bottom of the shelf, and they look like all the other cereals on the shelf. So they really get lost. Halo Top is one of my favorite examples. This is a great story if anybody's read anything about the brand Halo Top. They were about to close down their doors. They had this package that was very, private label. It looks kind of like a hippie natural food, and there's no focus. There's just like all these different claims. You're not sure what it is. It doesn't look like it would taste very good. And then they redesigned, and they created a whole category around a consumer need. So the consumer need state is when I buy a pint, I eat the whole thing, right? Like who doesn't eat a whole pint? So they focused all of their communication around here's the calories for the whole pint. Not calories per serving, but the whole pint. And they, their design is incredibly iconic. And I think what's brilliant is that this design came out, they had a great Instagram campaign, and they turned their business around, and now I'm so excited about Halo Top, you guys. I'm like, but now they're doing quite well. I think they've got 4% of the category, and they created a category within ice cream. They created a subcategory, which is 10% of the category now. So really impressive for a brand that was going to go under. And, here's a good one too. So everyone understands that this is Diet Coke, right? And this is a great example of designers kind of designing in a bubble without understanding the full equity of the brand, or without designing kind of in a vacuum. So in 2013, Coke came out with their yearly holiday can package. Looked like this. I'm sure you can see what the problem is. A lot of people saw this and thought it was Diet Coke, brought it home, and had a really unpleasant surprise. And so Coke had to then go back and fix it, which was a pretty expensive mistake to fix. So you have to make sure, like I said, you have to understand the conventions and make it easily shoppable. If somebody picks up something, like I said before, the orange and green, if somebody picks up something that's orange, they're gonna assume that's an orange flavor, or purple is grape, or you have to kind of work within those bounds, or at least understand the bounds so that when you do something different, you're doing it on purpose. And this is the last one. This is one of our brands also. We had a bread company come to us. This is coming out next year. Bless you. We had a bread company come to us with a fresh take and bake bread, which lives in the fresh bakery section of the aisle of the grocery store. And as you know, all the breads in there have brown paper bags, even the branded ones. Brown paper, crafty kind of look and feel. So we created something that really disrupts the category. And the brand story is built around Vigo, who's the person who started the brand back in the 1800s. So it brings you back the European heritage and the crafty feel, but also really is different from anything else out there in the category. And here's how King Vigo looks, very large. And that is it. So I wanted to leave time for questions.
I'll just ask a quick question while I wait, and if you guys could raise your hands if you have one. And that is, how important is it that all products be Instagram near avocado toast?
Wait, can you ask that again?
How important is it that well-designed products be Instagrammed near avocado
Oh, near
toast?
avocado. I mean, probably one of your number one marketing tools is avocado toast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Anyone here
yes.
in the avocado toast business?
send me your avocado toast, and I'll take pictures of our brands with it.
And any questions for Kelly right now? Or
Can you maybe comment how your can you comment a little bit how your role has changed over time with the CPG space today versus 10, 20 years ago?
Yeah, unfortunately I can because I'm getting to that age. Yes, well, when I first started in this industry, it was all about big brands, right? So Nestle, Kraft, Heinz, they were separate then. Those were the guys that we were working with, and it was all about design-wise, it was all about owning a color on the shelf, right? So that was the big push. Nowadays, all the little brands are eating away at the big brands, right? So it's a whole new world, and so our agency has changed quite a bit in terms of. You can really do the fun, exciting, differentiated, breakthrough stuff with the small guys because the big guys are too big and too slow to keep up. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly the CPG world in the area of packaging design has changed quite a bit. Now we're focusing a lot on Instagrammable packages. We're focusing a lot on, instead of calling out every tiny claim on the front, having an overall impression. Right? Because it has to be quick. Gone are the days where a shopper would pick up the package and read all the things. Now people are shopping e-com and people are making purchase decisions on Instagram. So it's definitely, I mean, I could probably talk on this for the rest of the time, but a lot of things have changed. Yeah.
There's an interesting point as well, which is you said that products that are well packaged are going to beat a good social media campaign at any time. Yeah. Are there packaging cues though that work better for social media right now?
I don't know specific cues. I think, well, yeah, there's lots of things that work better on social media. It's more iconic typography and strong color and bold graphics definitely work best in a tiny space. But I'd say a lot of that really depends on the product and the brand story, right? And what feeling. To me, it's much more important the impression you get, the emotional connection you get with the package than it is to spell out all the specifics up front.
Yes, I appreciate your history, and so I wanted to ask you, when you rebrand a brand, do you have a standard protocol that you take to communicate that to the consumer?
Yeah, and it really does depend on the brand, but yes, we've rebranded a lot of things over the years. In fact, we just rebranded our agency, and so it's a timely question. But yes, and nowadays it would be a lot of social media, right? And depending on the size of the brand that you're rebranding, depends on how far you go, and depends on the type of following that they already have and how they're already talking to their consumers. But yeah, it really varies quite a bit depending on the size of the brand that you're doing, but a lot of social media these days.
Is new and improved still acceptable?
I mean, yes, absolutely. New and improved is still acceptable. New look, same product. There's lots of acceptable ways of communicating that, but social media.
We have time for one last question.
Thanks, Kelly. I had a question. You made some comments about understanding the conventions around shape and color that exist within your category. What advice would you have if you're actually wanting to do something quite different within that category? What process do you have to go through, or what considerations are there?
Well, if you were a huge brand with lots of money, you'd do lots of testing. But since you're not, you'd have to do some more down and dirty ways of figuring that out. But be a disruptor, definitely. Do something different. But understand the world that you're disrupting first. Really have a good feel for what everybody else is doing, because you don't want to disrupt and throw people off. You want to disrupt in a good way. There's different ways of doing it, but yeah, definitely disrupt. Yeah.
Thanks so much,
Awesome.
Kelly.
Thank you so
That was
much.
terrific.